This has been my experience of the NBN so far. This should be a piece of coaxial cable running from the street down to my house. What I've got instead, for some reason, is a trench halfway up the driveway with a piece of PVC pipe and a rope running through it. And that's all.
It's an absolute shocker. We had a great plan, we had a great vision, and we actually missed that opportunity.
Of course, if we had unlimited time and money, we'd give everybody fibre, but we don't.
The NBN will be fit for purpose. It will support the needs that Australians have, but no network, no technology is ever set in stone.
I just feel incredibly disappointed and sad that an opportunity to build a first-class network that would set Australia up for the future was squandered, and squandered for the wrong reasons.
Welcome to Four Corners. When it was first announced a decade ago, the National Broadband Network promised to jump Australia into the 21st century. Our biggest ever infrastructure project was likened to building the 19th century's National Railway, a critical piece of nation building to secure Australia's long-term economic future. But halfway through the NBN rollout, a growing number of consumers are bitterly frustrated by their experience of getting connected to the network and by the service it delivers. Complaints to the Telecommunications Ombudsman about the NBN have risen dramatically. There are also serious concerns that by the time it's completed in 2020, much of the technology will already need upgrading. While the NBN's detractors say that Australia will be a decade behind our near neighbour, New Zealand, where Jeff Thompson begins his report.
Near the bottom of the world, the historic city of Dunedin on New Zealand's South Island is kicking some unexpected goals. The 130,000 people who live here have access to internet speeds most Australians can only dream of. Tonight there's a more familiar trans-Tasman clash as Dunedin hosts the deciding game of the Bledisloe Cup.
Who do you think's going to win tonight?
All Blacks.
Yeah, but why? Why do you think the All Blacks will win?
Just because I am a Kiwi and they're better than Australia.
And away goes for now. I don't think they'll run him down. They're closing, but not quickly enough. What a start, the Wallabies.
Oh, man! Is Australia going to win tonight?
Of course they are. It's half time, we're up.
Well, yeah, we've been there before.
We're going to call it off now. Of course we're going to win.
Sadly, rugby fans have gotten used to watching Australia snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, particularly when up against New Zealand.
Quick hands, Reed in space,
beating Australia. Look, they're lovely people, but we're better.
As usual, the Kiwis have played their rugby with a unified determination to get the result they want. And it's that sort of single-minded focus which is also driving the rollout of New Zealand's broadband network.
And it means New Zealand's beating Australia in the race to get world-class internet speeds too.
You live here. Do you use the ultra-fast broadband?
Yeah. Oh, it's way faster than Australia. Yeah. About 10 times the speed, yeah.
Oh, Australia's buggered when it comes to broadband. And the NBN network, forget it. Here's much better. Faster than anything.
Do you think it gives New Zealand an advantage competitively in the world?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it does.
In Dunedin and across New Zealand, the rollout of optical fibre directly to the vast majority of homes and businesses is well underway. Fibre to the premises, as it is known, is globally acknowledged as the gold standard of fast and reliable internet.
We're going to see 85% of New Zealanders getting fibre to the home, 1 gigabit per second to every home in New Zealand. We're giving New Zealanders choice. Obviously, they can take 100 megabits per second or 200, or they can take a gig. But a 1 gigabit per second will be available to every house that connects to fibre.
And you can see for expansion in the future, we can probably add more fibre capacity as time goes by.
Martin Sharrock is the head of networks at Chorus, the private telecommunications company working with New Zealand's government to build a world-class broadband network.
We travel around the world to try and understand what other countries have done. Countries like Japan, Singapore, South Korea have been doing fibre to the home for many, many years. Even in the US, in pockets, they've been doing fibre to the home. So we learned from them, and we've caught up pretty quickly. And I think more countries will be starting to catch up with New Zealand over the next decade.
Dunedin won a nationwide competition to be New Zealand's first gigatown, giving people here who want it early access to gigabit internet speeds. That's 1,000 megabits per second. That enables huge amounts of data to be moved across the internet faster than you could save it to a memory stick.
It's given us a bit of a lead. I mean, ultimately, all communities are going to have ultra-fast broadband at some point, but it's given us a lead and it's enabled us to attract some IT businesses to the city that perhaps might not have looked at the place.
In downtown Dunedin, there's free ultra-fast broadband available to everybody via Wi-Fi, and it's really good. But the casual visitor to this city would not otherwise notice that this is a place on the cutting edge of fast broadband technology. But hidden behind the doors and windows here are people and businesses taking full advantage of it.
Oh my God, it's looking fantastic. It's looking so good. I'm so jealous though how good Unreal looks quickly compared to Unity. Oh yeah. Far out, that looks amazing.
Dean Hall started his video game studio, Rocketworks, with some of the $10 million he made developing his first super successful game. That was DayZ, a zombie-killing survival game Dean started developing while in the New Zealand military.
What's up, guys? Multiple times a day, we're able to sync the entire company, work of 40 people, terabits of work constantly. We're getting really high downloads as well as basically averaging, 400 to 800 upload as well.
Dunedin's fibre-connected homes help Rocketworks attract talent from around the world.
We even actually find that it's a huge recruitment bonus, people having fibre in their homes when they come over and visit us from America, and we've had a few Australians return over from Europe and work here from big, huge studios making the biggest games. They're loving the fact that they can get fibre cheaply and at their home. What's up, guys?
Dean Hall can't believe Australia's new NBN is connecting millions of people with old technology like copper wire.
Oh, I get a shudder when I think about it. I think it's gone from the point of being a competitive advantage to use fibre to just being a basic requirement. So I think it would be a tremendously scary situation if I was in Australia to be in that situation. There's just so many other things to worry about. You don't want to be worrying about your lack of fibre network. I couldn't imagine building a new place and not having fibre into every home.
Back across the ditch, the digital divide is stark. Australian video game developers Joel Stiles and Cheryl Vance can only imagine having the internet their competitors in New Zealand have come to expect. Their new game was made here in their suburban Brisbane home.
My dearest child.
Yonder, the Cloudcatcher Chronicles is a fantasy adventure game for kids which just won a prestigious international prize.
You shall find your way home.
There are some people who can run businesses with small amounts of data, but for anybody that's future-proofing, they need the data, they need to be pushing that data through very quickly, and we're already at our maximum right now.
Cheryl and Joel are on the NBN. The NBN has laid optical fibre to this green box, called a node, down the street from their home. Here, the fibre connects to old copper phone wire, which runs into their house underground. Known as fibre to the node, this is the way the NBN is connecting the largest number of Australian homes and businesses.
So we pay for a premium business account. It's highly variable on a day-to-day basis though.
The longer the length of copper running to a house, the slower the internet speeds. Cheryl and Joel pay almost $130 a month to get up to 100 megabits per second download and an upload speed of 40 megabits per second. A quick online check of their internet speeds shows that, like many Australians, they rarely get what they're paying for.
You've been to New Zealand recently. When you see gaming companies over there, and what they're working with, how does that make you feel?
Sorry, I think I laugh because it's probably the answer. Really, it's enviable. Really, it truly is. It would be nice to take one more pressure, one more risk off the company, and be able to just get on with it and know that that's, like I said, one less thing that we have to worry about.
Cheryl and Joel's business partner, John Cartwright, is here to get a copy of the game to take overseas.
So what are we looking at, like 5 or 6 gig or something?
They reckon it's faster for him to pick up a copy and drive it across the city than it is to send over the NBN.
That has copied. All right, so there you go, and I will start the upload.
So they put it to the test. The NBN upload takes almost an hour.
Hey Joel, 35 minutes door to door. How are you doing with the upload? Right, thanks. Yeah, we beat it.
To understand why, we need to go back to 2009. When Labor Prime Minister Kevin Rudd stunned the nation by committing to build a broadband network connecting 90% of Australians with fibre to the premises.
Like the building of Snowy Hydro, like the building of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, this is an historic act of nation building.
The government enterprise would cost around $43 billion and be required to make a commercial return, so it was ready to be sold 5 years after completion in 2018. It promised to catapult Australia to the front of the global broadband race.
And the possibilities of tomorrow.
Investing in fibre to the premises, broadband, puts Australia among the world leaders, such as Japan, Singapore, New Zealand, Korea and Malaysia, all driving the rollout of fibre-based high-speed services. It will provide a platform for innovative health and education applications and connect our regional areas to the digital economy.
A year later, the NBN plan helped deliver Julia Gillard government.
You do it once, you do it right, and you do it with fibre.
We've been set some priorities by the government to deliver broadband throughout the continent.
The project, led by a former international telco chief, Mike Quigley, immediately became the target of sustained political attack.
They have provided no evidence, no financial analysis, no business case to persuade any of us or convince any of us that this isn't going to be nothing other than a massive destruction of taxpayers' money.
Prioritising regional areas in the rollout stretched NBN Co's resources, as far-flung places had low demand and few economies of scale.
We are a year into the project.
As costs increased, pressure mounted.
Capital costs are up $1.4 billion to $37.4 billion. Operating costs for the next 9 years are forecast to rise $3.2 billion.
This is an admission of colossal failure. The NBN is falling behind every single benchmark the government has set for it.
As we know, Mr. Turnbull's a very intelligent and very energetic individual, so he made sure that there wasn't an opportunity that went past to criticise the company. And he did it unrelentingly.
There were delays. Tense negotiations with Telstra over access to its infrastructure took 9 months. Malcolm Turnbull claimed the cost of Labor's NBN would blow out dramatically.
We estimate that to complete the NBN according to the Labor Party's plans will cost $94 billion.
Malcolm. How are you, mate? Terrific to see you, mate.
As a federal election loomed, the coalition under Tony Abbott released its own NBN plan.
What a great place to be. The mecca of Australian sport. To be launching a fair income national broadband network, mate. Right. We will deliver a better national broadband network faster and more affordably than this government possibly can.
Our predecessors effectively had, I guess, what I call a theological vision for the NBN. They had fantasy targets. We wanted to be realistic.
Under the Coalition's plan, around 1/5 of homes and businesses get fibre to the premises, with the majority connected through existing technologies like copper phone wires and pay TV cables. It was meant to cost less than $30 billion and be done by 2016.
We'll be taking fibre out into the field, but not all the way into the customer's premise. And that saves about 3/4 at least of the cost. Now, what this will deliver is speeds that are more than capable of delivering all of the services and applications households need. Because that's really the issue. It's not a question of what is your headline speed, it is what can you do with it.
But after winning government, the Coalition's promise couldn't be kept, with the cost of its plan also blowing out to about $50 billion and taking until 2020.
The fundamental assumptions on which that decision was made in 2013 have absolutely proven to be wrong. It isn't $29.5 billion, it's now 49 to 56, and it isn't the end of 2016, it's the end of 2020, if it gets finished by then. So the cheaper, faster, better were wrong on every count.
It's still a good deal, says the government.
The NBN network will be one that's fit for purpose. Our objective as a government is to see the NBN rolled out as soon as possible and at the least cost through what's known as the multi-technology mix approach that we're taking. I think it's important to recognise that the guts of the NBN is fibre. The NBN is a fibre-based network. We are, for the last component in the street, in some cases using copper. We are, for the last component in the street, in some cases using the existing HFC pay TV cable. The reason we're doing that is because that really speeds up the rollout of the NBN. It really reduces the costs of the rollout of the NBN. So the guts of this is fibre, and Australians will get fast speeds.
The legacy of the policy change can be seen in communities across Australia. Dubbo in Western New South Wales is a city divided.
On the left-hand side, as we're driving down this street, those houses can have access to fibre to the node. On the right-hand side, they're fibre to the premise. So this is the digital divide in Dubbo that we're driving along.
Matthew Dickerson runs a telecommunications business in Dubbo. He was the city's independent mayor when the planned rollout of fibre to the premises suddenly stopped.
This entire area was meant to be all fibre to the premise, as all of Dubbo was actually announced as fibre to the premise, but then there was a change made and the 7 areas that Dubbo was broken up into were then taken, rather than all 7 fibre to the premise, 3 of those were decided to be fibre to the node. Of course, the people on the left-hand side would prefer to have fibre to the premise. It's a more reliable connection, it's a faster connection, and certainly the experience for people using fibre to the premise is much better, but they don't have a choice. If you're on that side of the street, fibre to the node, the right-hand side, happy days, fibre to the premise.
Real estate agent Richard Teggart confirms that buyers are already making decisions about where to live based on the type of connection they can get to the NBN.
It's now a circumstance where people will come to an open home, they'll have a look around the home and the other services, you know, is what's the heating, what's the cooling, is there gas connected, etc. A very common question now is NBN connected? And then the next question I ask is it connected fibre to the premises or is it fibre to the node? It's interesting that most consumers, I guess, or home buyers are certainly aware as to what they want with internet connections.
G'day, David, is it? Yes, Jeff Thompson, Four Corners. How you going?
David Haywood and his family moved into this house believing it was getting fibre to the premises.
To the premise, yeah. A lot more consistent and speed-wise it's just so much better. It means it's easier, you know, as a family whenever we're streaming stuff and I'm playing games and doing all sorts of stuff, it just makes so much better.
But the Haywoods' house ended up getting fibre to the node. Even though they pay the top price for the top speed, they find it impossible to get it.
So as you can see, we got 46 megabits per second down and 14 up, which is we're paying for 100 and 100 down and 40 up. So it's only about half, if a little bit less of that.
Fibre to the node physically cannot deliver some of the speeds that people are paying for. The NBN told a Senate inquiry 67.7 megabits per second is the top average download speed on fibre to the node. The NBN and service providers know the speeds each individual premises can get, but their customers mostly aren't told. After Four Corners contacted Telstra, the Haywoods were told that 46 megabits per second is the best download speed they could ever get, less than half what they've been paying for 15 months.
So you're just not getting what you're paying for?
No, definitely not.
Do you feel like you're being ripped off?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely feel like we're being ripped off.
The NBN boss says if people want a faster connection, they can pay for it themselves.
If a homeowner really feels it's important to have these higher speed capabilities going into their house, we have something called the Tech Choice program to where they can pay the incremental cost to bring fibre all the way up inside the home. And that's been a program that's been in place now for a few years.
That can be thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars.
That's right, yes. But if it's that important to the consumer, about them paying for that rather than passing the load on to every other user, that's the concept behind it.
But their neighbour might have got it for free.
Well, they may have, and the neighbor should consider themselves fortunate that they got in at that particular time. And this is just the way it works. Some motorways are closer access to your home than others, and it's no different when it comes to the broadband network that's being built across Australia.
Data consumption in Australia is exploding, almost doubling in the last 2 years. What most users want from their internet is speed, reliability and capacity at a reasonable price. The NBN gets criticised for being slow and unpredictable, especially at peak hour in the evenings. One of the key reasons for this is because the retail service providers you sign up with to get on the NBN often don't buy enough capacity, known as bandwidth, to give customers the speeds they're paying for.
A retailer today can offer a congestion-free network. They just have to provision enough bandwidth from NBN to be able to get it. So it changes the retailer's economics, but they can offer it. Our network, again, is not what's slowing people down, with a few exceptions.
Service providers say the NBN's charging too much.
Ultimately, people aren't getting what they're paying for because service providers aren't provisioning enough bandwidth into the NBN network. And those providers generally aren't doing that because they need to keep costs at a particular price point, and NBN's bandwidth is extremely expensive by bandwidth comparisons elsewhere in the world.
People have a budget, yeah? People want to spend $50 or $70 or whatever, yeah, on their broadband connection. They're not going to pay $200 for a broadband connection. So yes, you can say you can have a higher speed network, but if that's going to cost $150 or $200, then the majority of Australian people can't afford that.
In New Zealand, the country's smaller size and population make the rollout easier. Because Chorus inherited the old phone infrastructure, the company's costs are also lower. Service providers aren't charged for bandwidth, and that means the speeds customers pay for is pretty much the speeds they get.
Chorus has a very, very clear policy that any data that comes into our network will be, 1, unlimited, and number 2, completely congestion-free.
Chorus in New Zealand guarantees a congestion-free network. Why can't Australia?
Well, because they're doing so with the type of fibre that they've built, and their economics are fundamentally different than what we have in Australia. Again, you think about the fact that Chorus was a company that had its own ducts and its own offices and exchanges that they really didn't have to pay anything for because they've been cost recovered over quite many of decades in the past. NBN, on the other hand, has to pay Telstra for the use of these ducts and facilities that aren't ours. And so that drives up the cost of us building this network out to every home, and hence the reason why we don't have the luxuries that some other country, or like New Zealand, the case of Chorus has.
So far, 35% of New Zealanders have chosen full fibre connections once they become available, and 90% of them are choosing speeds of 100 megabits per second or more.
We're really happy with the direction that New Zealand has taken. We built a really, really good fibre to the node network. It's VDSL, it's getting some fantastic speeds, and we've now built a fibre to the home network and making sure that people can migrate from one to the other all the time.
Tonight, around about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, the guys will go online, but they will be doing it from home because they have fibre.
Ian Taylor runs a sports animation business in Dunedin. He believes fibre is transformative.
It changes the way you think about things. It opens the horizons. You always expect from here to be connected to the world, to each other, to opportunities, and it's the norm. I think it actually goes to the thinking of a country.
The NBN is under pressure to complete the rollout by 2020, with an obligation to give everybody minimum download speeds of 25 megabits per second. Technology choices at each site are being driven by what's quickest and cheapest.
This is the node that's connected to the exchange, which we only just visited. This is powered by mains power.
NBN spokesman Tony Brown took us to Redland Bay, southeast of Brisbane, to explain how much time and money can be saved by connecting hundreds of homes to just one node.
So rather than on a fibre to the premises connection, where we'd have to go into this estate, go down every single driveway, possibly dig up the driveway to deliver a fibre connection into the premise, on this technology here, through connecting fibre into copper at the pillar at the end of the street there, every single premise from this cabinet can be served immediately. So that's up to nearly 400 premises can be served instantaneously once the cabinet is powered and turned on. That makes this a much more cost-effective and time-efficient way of serving people broadband.
When the rollout peaks next year, 70,000 homes will be connected to the NBN every week.
Of course, if we had unlimited time and money, we'd give everybody fibre, but we don't. And so the best thing to do to get people connected quickly to the NBN is to put these cabinets in place, get the power, plug the fibre into the copper, and people are connected very, very quickly.
Hundreds of thousands of people around Australia aren't even getting connected because their premises are classed as unserviceable. Sydney software developer David Banham has been waiting months for the NBN since signing up in May.
This has been my experience of the NBN so far. This should be a piece of coaxial cable running from the street down to my house. What I've got instead, for some reason, is a trench halfway up the driveway with a piece of PVC pipe and a rope running through it. And that's all.
And how long have you been waiting for the NBN?
This has taken 6 months. We've gotten to this stage in 6 months with 3 crews coming out and 1 no-show.
So at the moment you're not a happy NBN customer?
No, I am not. I am a very, very frustrated NBN customer.
Problem properties like David's are passed over for now, so the rollout isn't delayed. Most of them are in areas being connected with old pay TV cables.
So all that they need to do is unplug that cable from the Optus tap and plug it in to the old Telstra tap. And as far as I'm aware, job done. That would work, but we haven't been able to manage that.
It would just be a matter of moving it really a foot or so, that connection, and then stringing it to your house and you'd have the NBN.
Job done.
But 6 months and you haven't got it?
Nothing.
David's had multiple site visits, but no clear answers.
Well, I mean, it's infuriating. You know, when one contractor shows up and doesn't know what the last person did, what they were trying to achieve, what they were hoping to do, and then they just go away again with still no connection made, it's infuriating.
David works from home and has been told his existing internet connection could be cut off any day, as he's meant to be migrated to the NBN.
Nobody knows what anybody else is doing. The RSP don't know what NBN Co is doing. I don't know what either of them are doing. And NBN Co don't seem to know what they themselves are doing.
Do you think you're alone in this frustration?
No. I mean, you hear it a lot that, you know, people are having massive problems trying to get connected.
People are tearing their hair out with this stuff. They seem to have nowhere to go.
It turns my stomach. This is, again, I think part of the problem with the confusion we've left with the consumer out there. Who is responsible for this? And quite frankly, we've decided, and we work with the retailers now to say we don't care. We'll just get it sorted for that end user. I know some people are having to wait longer than what they want to out there. This is a complex undertaking. We want everybody to have it smooth. We'll get everybody connected by the year 2020 in terms of access to their home or to their business. We'll work out some of these bugs that we have of this finger pointing going back and forth, but it just is not acceptable.
The rollout is being done by an army of subcontractors, and the quality of their work is variable.
And what can you show us here?
Well, this is where the cable's been direct buried in the ground.
Brisbane-based subcontractor Pete Menzies is taking us to see how shoddy work can cause connection problems.
And when did you first discover this?
It was in December.
And why did you come and look at it in the first place?
Well, because the house down in the corner, it wasn't working. I just worked my way back, found out it was all right that side, not that side, and he just narrowed it down. I went, oh, I've dug up driveway. So I came here and looked around and looked at pits, and when I grabbed hold of the green cable and just pulled it completely out of the ground.
In this driveway, NBN fibre optic cables have been buried shallow and unprotected in the ground.
So what are we looking at?
So this here is supposed to be in a pipe. There's 12 houses relying on that cable.
And it's just buried in the
It's just direct buried in the ground. It's now been 10 months, hasn't been fixed correctly yet. So.
Still in the dirt.
Subcontractors get paid per job completed, so there's plenty of incentive to do jobs quickly and move on to the next one. Pete Menzies says a lot of his jobs are fixing the mistakes of others.
This is a pigtail. which has outer coating, protective coating, and there's another protective coating, and then inside that is a piece of fibre.
Slightly thicker than a human hair, optical fibre can be hard to see. But Pete Menzies, who did a 4-year apprenticeship, can easily spot evidence of inadequate training. He's got the photos to prove it.
If you see these, how all the ends of this here are open, they were all full of mud. This is a multi-port, and on the end of those are supposed to be little caps. So all four of those out of one multi-port were faulty because the dirt's got right down inside that and couldn't clean it. So NBN then had to come out and replace that multi-port. I wasn't actually witness to this, but...
In this photo, which became a viral email between subcontractors, a copper connector appears to have been used to connect fibre.
Would that work?
No, not at all.
What does that suggest to you?
People going out and doing jobs that aren't qualified, aren't trained properly to do the job. I have no idea what was going through their mind, really. They're not paid the right amount of money to fix it properly. They're just going to fix it as quickly as you possibly can and get out of there. You can't explain why people would do it, and it's obviously gone down to inexperience and not being paid enough money to do the job. So you get paid per job and you want to roll out 10 jobs in a day, well, you're going to cut as many corners as you can and just get the job done, get the service done.
Bill Morrow accepts that the rush to get the NBN built means that corners are being cut.
Do you think this is just a natural effect of the rush to get this done at the moment, that a lot of contractors are getting hired very quickly, often with little training?
I don't think there's any doubt. The fact that we are setting a new precedent in terms of how fast a network could be built, how quickly we are going to transition everybody over to this. We have to remember this is an industry-wide transformation, and it's unprecedented in terms of the magnitude of what this is. It brings to it complexity, it brings to it challenges that no one was able to ever predict. So we're seeing these issues emerge.
On the ground, it leads to compromises.
Well, it does, and it shouldn't, though.
It's an absolute shocker. You know, we had a great plan, we had a great vision, and we actually missed that opportunity. We went down from a first-rate network, from a progressive country, to one who's again lagging behind.
Did the politics that led to the multi-technology mix leave the NBN in an ultimately unwinnable position?
I would say the multi-technology mix does allow us to achieve the objectives, but it does introduce more complexity. And it's complexity that we understand as a trade-off of getting broadband to the Australian public faster and doing so in a more economically prudent way.
Technological advances are getting faster speeds out of copper. But as the rollout progresses, the NBN is moving fibre closer to some homes. One of these distribution boxes can connect 4 houses with what's known as fibre to the curb, a new technology connecting about 10% of premises. It reduces the length of copper running into homes, and that means better speeds.
As a recovering engineer, fibre medium is better than copper medium. You can't argue any other way. But do we need that fibre today? We know it costs more. Is it worth it to us to spend that money when we don't really need it and copper would suffice? I think this is the policy that we're operating under today.
It's interesting to look at the speed packages that people are purchasing. About 83% of people are purchasing speed products of 25 megabits per second or less, and that doesn't really vary much whether you're talking fibre to the node or fibre to the premise.
So it's enough for today, but not necessarily for the future?
Well, the NBN will be fit for purpose. It will support the needs that Australians have, but no network, no technology is ever set in stone. There are always upgrades. NBN is looking to those, and indeed NBN has already identified a number of upgrade paths.
There is no budget or commitment to upgrade most Australians to fibre to the premises.
Sometimes people say, do you feel angry about it? No, I just feel incredibly disappointed and sad that an opportunity to build a first-class network that would set Australia up for the future was squandered, and squandered for the wrong reasons, and demonstrably the wrong reasons now today. But we've got what we've got, and there's no point crying over it. The MTM will be built, but it will have to be ultimately upgraded at a cost of tens of millions.
In the end, won't Australia have to bite the bullet and go full fibre anyway?
Well, I think that is really a matter of what the future actually brings. Will we need to upgrade more fibre into the future? I think the probability is pretty high. When? That's pretty hard to predict. How much? That's pretty hard to predict. And it comes down to the question is, do you pay the money now, or do you pay for it as you need it? And that is the model the current government has chosen. That is the model to which NBN are building out by.
The rollout pace is increasing, but not as quickly as the number of complaints to the Telecommunications Industry Ombudsman. This year, the number of complaints about the NBN jumped by almost 160%. David Banham is still waiting for his connection.
Well, NBN Co were meant to show up today. We've had yet another no-show. It's the end of the day, nobody's shown up, we've still got no internet connection. No wonder so many people are upset about it.